Right guys, hope you're all keeping safe. Thanks to everyone for checking out my stream yesterday. It was a long one. I will be streaming this evening as well, hopefully, trying to complete the raid. Today I've got your weekly State of the Game recap video, which includes talk about the Rainbow loot and possible fixes they have seen suggested, the Iron Horse mechanic leaks prior to actually the raid starting, the TU 10.1 changes with minimum item power changes, and more. If you enjoy this one, you can drop a like down below. It does help me out, a comment, and you can also join me on Patreon if you wish to support me separate to YouTube. With that said though guys, let's begin. Alright, so as always guys, I've got my notes here from today's State of the Game. I thought it was going to be a spicy one. It wasn't as spicy as I thought it might be, but we'll get through everything here. So we had Hamish, Yannick and Nikki, and what they started off saying was that Massive were a co-developer of the Iron Horse raid, but it was actually predominantly made by Ubisoft Annecy, and of course we saw that in the special report before the raid went live yesterday. They then went on to talk about the priority alerts. There was a maintenance yesterday, mainly for the raid, but there were some other little changes, nothing really of any kind of relevance. They then talked about the Iron Horse raid leaderboard issue. So basically what happened yesterday is that for some people they were disconnected. And if you are disconnected during your attempt, and you log back in to that attempt, for example, if you resume from where you left off, then there's an issue with the leaderboards where it won't log that attempt. So if you then go on to complete the raid, it won't log that you've actually gone ahead and done it. And for a lot of people, they got to, well, I say a lot of people, it wasn't a lot of people, but for some people, they got to a certain point. They obviously went back and realised that the leaderboard wasn't been fixed. So that's an issue ongoing. They confirmed that the Division 1 global events, they are back. So if anyone's still playing the Division 1 and you're maybe looking forward to the next global event, it will be on July 13th and it's the Strike global event. I think the majority of people who are still playing the Division 1 are playing it for survival. I myself still play the survival now and then when I want to play the Division. They then want to talk about Iron Horse, the fact that it went live yesterday for level 40, and level 30 will be going live next week on July 7th. There is no ETA on the Discovery mode. What I will say is, from my experience of playing this raid, Discovery mode is going to be probably quite difficult anyway, because this is more of, there is definitely some DPS in there, but it's not like Dark Hours, which is pretty much all DPS. There is a lot more talk, and there is a lot more mechanics required for this particular raid, which makes the Discovery mode harder, but of course they need one so that people can go in, matchmaking, all that sort of good stuff. They then went on to congratulate the winners, which was the Solid FPS clan. They finished at about 2:30 PM. So at about 8.5 hours or 7.5 hours after the raid went live. Xbox One finished about 5 hours later, so that'll be about 7:30 in the morning. And PS4 was about 3 hours later, so that was about 10:30 today. Each party will be in the White House and their name will be up on the plaque, and that will be implemented with TU 10.1. Now TU 10.1 will be coming soon, but there is no date yet. They said it should be around the second half of July, so it's likely going to be the 21st or the 28th, as that's the only two Tuesdays that are after the are in the second half of July. There will be additional bug fixing with this and balancing. They said that TU 11 is currently in the works, and there will be a summer break soon as well from these State of the Games. It will be, I believe it's going to be for 4 weeks, although they didn't officially confirm that. Hamish then went on to ask Yannick about the Iron Horse raid mechanics, the leak being shared before the raid started, or certain people having access to stuff that other people simply didn't. Yannick said that the full story at the moment, from what they can see, is that there are reports of some information being leaked. The devs were aware of the PTS leaks from data mining, which I actually covered in a video myself, with some text which gives you a little bit of info about what the bosses say, but it doesn't tell you about the mechanics at all. So there was nothing in that could really be used. What has come out is another document that has a lot more information explaining all of the mechanics. I've seen this document. It explains a lot, and if you've got access to this, you have got such a huge advantage over people who simply don't have access to this information. There is an investigation that's ongoing right now within Massive to see whether this is something internal, where someone's leaked something out that they shouldn't have, or from Ubisoft, or whether this has been data mined. They simply just don't know at this point. What they did say is this haven't been given to people by Massive or Ubisoft to kind of give them a head start, if that makes it wasn't intentional, if that makes sense. The devs don't know exactly how all this information got out to certain people, and so yeah, they're going to be looking into that. And of course, I presume that if they find out who did this and there's some issues with that, we could see some bans. I don't know, they never said that, but that's kind of the air that I got from what they were saying. On to Nikki, the question was asked about loot and any changes coming to loot. So they said that with TU10, it changed the way they decide the item power with a minimum and maximum roll. That resulted with items being a bit more centered, okay, between the minimum and the maximum. Unfortunately, due to technical limitations, they were unable to implement an increase in the minimum with TU10, but this is going to change now that they've made changes to those technical limitations. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be increasing the minimum power for higher difficulties. There's going to be a slight bump for challenging, a pretty big bump from what I heard or saw for heroic, and then legendary will get a bump as well. The overall structure with loot on raids is such that both have their own gear sets and exotics. I think people are getting confused over that. The Eagle Bearer is very much still exclusive to Dark Hours. The two new exotics for Iron Horse, the Ravenous, can drop from the bosses at a very, very low chance, and also you have a higher chance of getting it from the box at the end. The Regulars can be attained once you've done the raid. You'll get 2 projects which will set the path towards getting that exotic, and the keys for the Dark Hours cannot be used for the Iron Horse. Okay, so they're separate keys. They want to talk about the skill cooldown and loadout interaction. So right now, if any skill is on cooldown, you cannot change your loadout. I had this issue just before the raid was about to start, and I had to actually relog in order to fix it. This is going to be changed. What they're going to be doing is that if you swap or want to swap a loadout, the skill that's on cooldown will remain in its place and stay on cooldown, but the rest of the loadout will be equipped. And at first I thought in my head, well, why don't they just let you swap it all? But obviously that then bypasses the whole thing being on cooldown, and people could use that to get around the whole cooldown thing. So this is their way of fixing that. They went on to talk about Season 2. They talked about how leagues, the difficulty has been changed. It's been lowered if you haven't seen that already. The reason being that it used to be challenging and then 1 heroic. What that meant is that it pushed a lot of players out of playing the league because they just were simply not on challenging. So what they were saying is that when you have challenging and heroic, challenging is the low bar, if that makes sense. And so they were pushing players up to that challenging when they weren't ready for it. And what they were trying to do here is they're just trying to make it more accessible. Thoughts, guys, on that, leave it down in the comments below. I may cover this particular subject in another video. The Termite League is live now, of course. There is a UI issue with the Manning National Zoo which shows 50 seconds, but if you click on the requirements, it shows the times properly. They never talked about it in the state of the game, but I wanted to mention that here as well. They then had questions about rainbow rolls. So this is being discussed internally, and this is very hot right now in the community. They wanted to debunk any myths that anything has kind of changed since TU10. The 2 attributes that drop out, the 2 minor attributes essentially, are completely random. Of course, every piece of gear has a set major attribute, or red, blue, or yellow, but the other 2 just complete RNG. The devs are going to update the system so that they can actually look at how they can improve this, because this is something they couldn't really change because it was kind of off system. I don't know how that works, but they're making some changes so they can look to improve it. They brought up the example of a change I talked about, whereby if an item rolls a major red, for example, another attribute will roll the same and the third will be random. What they said is with this particular solution, they're concerned this may hurt those people who want hybrid builds. But in my opinion, you could just recal the one attribute that matches the major. So that way you would get, say for example, you got red, red and yellow, you then recal one of the reds, the minor one, and then you could get red, blue, yellow, right? If you want all attributes to be the same, then you recal the one yellow, so you get red, red, red. So to me, it makes sense that would work, but they didn't say that. And again, they're still discussing how they're going to address this internally. It's not going to make it for TU10, possibly TU11. Next week, there will be some images of the new apparel event, Phoenix Down, so make sure you've got notifications turned on if you want to see those. There is a speed run on Iron Horse now. It's down to 1 hour 50 minutes with collecting all of the keys. And from what they've seen from all the different people who've done it or are going through it, everyone seems to be doing it a different way. There's lots of different builds. There was one team that had 6 tank builds, one team that had just healing drones and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of different builds that are able to do this raid, which is exactly what they wanted. They went back to talk about the leaks. Again, they are still investigating and they are compiling evidence. What they don't want to do is accuse people of being guilty without actual concrete evidence, and they are aware of a team, and I'm going to say the POG team, bragging about having the document, because I know they're bragging about having the document. They're the ones that actually posted it on Twitter. Division 2 on Next Gen, there's no news on that, although I actually covered this recently, and my understanding is Yannick has said that there's no plans for Next Gen at this point, as they want to focus on making the game as good as possible. PS5 and Xbox Series X will have backwards compatibility, so you are going to be able to play the game on those systems. They're just not going to be optimized for those systems. There are no plans for crossplay either. And then lastly, they talked about farming exotics in the Iron Horse raid. What they said, in theory, it is possible, but there are only 4 crates in Iron Horse and 5 keys are required for the crate at the end. These crates only give you 1 key per week, so you can only get 4 keys per week from the crates. The final boss, however, gives you a guaranteed key with no restrictions. So you could do it once and obviously have an attempt to get in the exotic from the crate, but then you would have to actually beat the raid 5 times in order to get 5 keys to do it again. Okay, and lastly, they included the final boss ending of Iron Horse. I'll include it here, guys. Spoiler warning, though, it does show you the end. So if you don't want to see that and you want to check it out another time or for yourself for the first time, then skip away now. That's the end of the video. Thanks very much for watching. Epic out.